All right, Jeremiah, thank you. Shea, we appreciate your time here so much tonight. You grew up a Reggie Miller fan. Of course, you're in San Antonio, a Greg Popovich fan. So we wanted to start this discussion by talking about Indiana and the state of basketball. Where do you rank this state amongst some of the basketball hotbeds around the country?
It's got to be up in the top, somewhere in the top 3 or 4. I don't know how a ton of basketball players that come out of Indiana, but I do know you guys had Reggie, and that was good enough. You had Reggie and you had Hoosiers, which I guess is like that's a good resume.
You don't need to convince anybody watching here about Reggie Miller, but you grew up a fan of his, and of course,
hmm
aren't from the area, aren't in our market that would a broadcast like this. What endeared you to him?
Oh man, Reggie was just the coolest person I'd seen. And when you are that age, I mean, I was what, 13, 14 years old or whatever, when Reggie was when like 94, 95. And that's when he sort of came into my orbit. Because when, like you mentioned, we live in San Antonio, so all that we watched were Spurs games. We didn't have cable at the house, and it wasn't like there was no NBA on TNT or whatever to watch the other games. So you just watched the games that they showed, and at our house it meant you're watching the Spurs play. So the only time I ever even saw Reggie was when he played the Spurs, but then they started doing the big Sunday games, and he started showing up there, and then in the playoffs, and it was just he was doing all of the things that I thought were cool. He was running his mouth at people. He was like shoving people. He was openly goading the other players. He was shooting threes, which at the time not a lot of people were doing, and I thought that was super cool. I thought the colors of the jersey were cool. I thought his number was cool. I thought his name was cool. He showed up on like a TV show that I liked. He was checking off all of the boxes. And then again, if I mean, the early '90s is when sort of David Robinson was running the town, and David Robinson is like super perfect Christian man, and Reggie was like the opposite of that. Like Reggie, from a basketball standpoint anyway, David Robinson would dunk it and nothing. He would not really celebrate any sort of real way. Reggie would make a free throw and then run his mouth, and I was like, this is my kind of guy right here.
You even got the appropriate background for us over your left shoulder there. Looks like you've got a Reggie Miller tag.
Yeah, I got a Reggie. That's like a his limited edition Hall of Fame bobblehead thing. I got a bunch of Reggie stuff in here. I got a autographed Reggie basketball card. It's my favorite basketball card. I got a Reggie starting lineup action figure. I got a ton of Reggie stuff all through my office. I got the pennant, and I got all of it. That's my guy.
Have you had the chance to meet him either through your work or just personally?
I talked to him on the phone when he did the forward for the basketball book. So when, I always use the forward for any of the books I write to like as an excuse to talk to somebody who I really like care deeply about. And so when I was doing the basketball book, he was the first one I thought of. And I hit up Kristen Ledlow because I didn't have any ties to Reggie at all. I'd never met him. I didn't know anybody who like knew him until I met Kristen. And I messaged her and I said, "Hey, this is like an idea I have. I want to get ready to do the forward for the book. Is there any way you can mention this to him?" And she was like, "I got you. Don't worry about it." And then like 2 days later, I was on the phone with him, and then we talked for like an hour or whatever. It was. I still have it recorded and saved as one of the best moments of my like professional career.
That's very cool. When people think about their top Reggie moments, I think that 8.9 seconds moment stands out to so many people.
hmm
Besides that moment, do you have a specific favorite Reggie memory?
Oh, I have a ton of them. I mean, of course, you have the 25 points in the fourth quarter. You have to include that one. That one was really great for me because we got a computer like at my house my senior year of high school, and this was when it was still dial-up internet, and it was like it wasn't the internet we know today. It was like an early internet, and um, the computer came with like all of these CDs, and one of them was a Sports Illustrated CD of like highlights, and you could scroll through the menu and click basketball and scroll through, and they had Reggie's the highlights from his 25 points in the fourth quarter, and I must have watched that countless times. Now you can just go on YouTube and like watch whatever you want, but back then you couldn't do that if you didn't have it recorded onto like a VHS. So to get that, I wore that mess out a bunch. There's that one. The one when he like shoves Jordan to hit the game winner is another one. The one when he made Jordan, then when they got into like a fight, is another one. Um, uh, I think the most emotional I ever got was when he retired, and they like called a timeout, and they're in Indiana, and it was clear they were going to lose the game, and they were going to be out of the playoffs. They're playing the Pistons, and so they call timeout, and he's like going to sit down and waving, and then the timeout is over, and then Larry Brown calls another timeout, and I was sitting at the house watching the game, and they start showing people in the crowd, and they're crying, and like I feel myself starting to like get teary eyed too. Um, there are just countless. When they played the Nets and he hit the three to tie the game in the playoffs, and then he dunked it too. And this was before they had instant replay, so they called the three good, and then they showed it, and it was still in his hands with like for another half a second or 0.1 second or whatever. There, there are a ton, man. We could do this all day if you want. That's my guy.
We certainly could. I think you're evoking a lot of feelings from those watching here along as well. Obviously, recently the 75th anniversary team was unveiled. I'm wondering what you think about Reggie's game and how it would perhaps translate to today's game.
He would be perfect in today's game. He would be deadlier in today's game. A game that is centered on around the 3-point line, around efficiency. Like he would be a murderer. I think I saw a thing one time where somebody like ran the numbers where if they plugged in his usage rate or what his usage rate would be if he played in today's NBA. If he's shooting like 13 threes a game, 11 threes a game or whatever, can you even imagine? I think he would be one of the 5 best players in the league, is my guess, is how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think if you take his efficiency numbers, if they stay the same and you give him like Steph's shot attempts, he's somewhere close to 5,000 made threes over his career. It's not
like what are we talking about?
It's not a perfect formula, but I think it does kind of give you an idea of how great he was in an era where the 3-point shot wasn't anywhere near where it was now. We're thrilled to have Shea Serrano here with us. Let's talk about Steph Curry a little bit. If you had to pick, if you've got a 2-point game, 5 seconds left, and you got one of those two guys, I mean, you're probably ending up at a good spot either way. But if you had to pick one of those two, you going Reggie, you going Steph?
So the thing of it is Steph Curry is probably the greatest shooter in the history of planet Earth. Like just from a pure pick up a basketball and shoot it standpoint. And part of that might be because he was born at an exactly perfect time to put him in the NBA today when we are celebrating exactly what he does. That said, him being the greatest shooter of all time, if I have one shot with the game on the line, I got to go Reggie. I just have to. Like, that's part of Reggie's legacy is like he's the guy who does exactly that thing. You know, Steph this season had his very first ever like game-winning buzzer beater. Like after all of the things that he's done, and I know a big part of that is because like his teams are always ahead by enough that they don't need that. But still, it happened. It finally happened this season, and that was like Reggie's thing from the start. You know what I'm saying? You could look at we talked about him shoving Jordan and then hitting the three. There's a perfect example. He's playing against Jordan, one of the greatest players of all time, maybe the greatest player of all time, and he hits the game-winning three. And then like this is a cheap shot, but you had Steph. Game 7 against one of the greatest players of all time, LeBron, one of maybe the greatest player of all time, and then he got locked up by Kevin Love. So, you know, give me Reggie.